Man, I'm excited today to welcome Jay Barbier to the Lead Clear podcast. Jay is a friend of mine. We've gone back and forth at different times, different meetings, and had an opportunity to connect at a couple conferences. And Jay is the youth specialist for the Tennessee Baptist State Convention. And man, this guy has a large sphere of influence, and he gets to work with some friends of mine there. And man, I'm excited to have him on the podcast today. Jay also has a ministry, or really it's a conference that he leads through the Tennessee Baptist State Convention called the YEC, Youth Evangelism Conference. And you can even see he's got his hat on right there. There it is. And man, this is a huge conference that happens in Nashville. And this year, man, they had to cancel because of the virus that was going around. And it was a bummer to watch that go down. But man, I know that Jay has remained faithful to evangelism in the state of Tennessee. And man, I'm excited. And so Jay, I just want to say welcome to the Live Clear podcast, my man.
What's up, man? It's an honor to be here with you, bro.
So Jay, man, I just, most people, what I love about you is like you're not personality driven. You love to be behind the scenes, and you love to just be working and equipping and resourcing people and pastors. And so, man, I would love for you to share just a little bit about your life journey and about the ministry that you do there with the Tennessee Baptist State Convention.
Yeah. I'm originally from South Louisiana. I'm actually a missionary in Tennessee. That's what my people down home like to say. For 18 years of my life, I was raised with religion. I knew all the things about God. I knew all the stories about Jesus Christ. But the truth was I never owned the gospel. I never really, truly had a personal relationship with Jesus. But at 18, I met a girl at a pizza place that led me to Jesus. She modeled it in my life. I ended up marrying that girl once I came to know Jesus, because she didn't want to really date or be around a non-believer, a friendship that led into a relationship. And she led me to Jesus. And I've gone, it's been a pretty amazing journey. It wasn't until I went on my first mission trip. That's the first time I ever shared Jesus. I actually went to Mexico with my church, First Baptist Church in Ponchatoula, Louisiana. And it really changed the direction of my life. God really started pushing me, showing me the need for me to share my faith anywhere and everywhere I go. And I really believe it was from that moment that when I was on that trip where God started calling me into ministry. But it wasn't until years later, after the birth of my son, the birth of my daughter, is when I felt like I was obedient, because God had been calling me for a while. But I let little things of sin like bitterness and really wanted to elevate myself as far as have my job I wanted, my home I wanted to live in. But it wasn't until when I surrendered to the ministry, man, we abandoned everything. I kind of like to say that the life of surrendering to the call of ministry is to live a life of reckless abandonment. This life isn't ours. It came to a point when I gave my life to Jesus, I surrendered to His lordship. I surrendered to Him. And when I baptize people, that's my greatest joy in student ministry.
Sure,
is when they go down in that water, I'm always like dead to self, and it's alive in Christ. And that's really who we are once we know Jesus. But especially when we surrender to the call, it can't be built on us, because if everything's on me, if everything's on the personality, what we see is it dies when the person dies. My goal is everything I do that people remember Jesus and His name and His fame, and that's really the goal. My role for the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board, I started in 2018. I came on as an evangelism specialist for youth ministry, but this past January, I became the lead youth specialist, and it's been an amazing journey. My job is essentially to resource, equip, and network with student pastors all across the state. But the beauty in ministry is real, true youth ministry is from birth to death. Because if you want to be a great youth pastor, you have to pour into leaders. You've got to pour into parents and grandparents and students. And then those students are going to influence children and other people. So really the scope of youth ministry has to be this threefold ministry of students, leaders, and parents.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, man. Hey, before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for what you do, my man. I try to, encourage anybody that comes on here, because I know that you're in the trenches, and I know that you have a lot of weight, and I know it's good weight that you carry, because it's a spiritual weight, and you know the Lord is carrying you. But just as your brother in Christ and a friend in ministry, I just want to say thank you for being an ambassador for the kingdom of God. Man, what you do matters. Even with the conference that I know that you invest so much of your year into, having to be canceled this year, man, the way that you handled that through social media, I just want to say thank you, because the gospel still shines even in the midst of chaos, right? Yeah. And so, man, I just want to thank you as your brother in Christ, for what you do. And so I was a student pastor for 17 years. I know the pain and the joy of it too, right? Like I know all those things. So to know that there's somebody who actually loves ministry because they love the Lord first, that is willing to equip those guys, man, that means the world to me. And just, man, thank you for championing those guys.
No problem.
I just believe student pastors are the hardest working people in the church. I just believe that, because their students don't know when the phone is supposed to be off. They are contacting all times of the night. And but man, if a student pastor is equipped and encouraged to go with the gospel and sees that student with the light bulb come on, get out of the way. It's going to be awesome. So thank you for what you do. Jay, I know you have a large network, obviously the state of Tennessee. I was in Tennessee for 8 years, and I love Tennessee. And I know there's a large, incredible church network there. And man, I because of your influence, because you're just the scale of ministry, I do want to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic with you for a minute. Man, what are you seeing from like a global approach of the church? Like, how are you seeing the church is responding? How do you feel that the church is doing right now? And what's needed, like at this moment, that myself or anybody listening could help their local church? What would you say to that?
Number one thing, when you look at just Tennessee, and we're specifically talking about Southern Baptist churches, we have well over 3,000, closer to between 3,200 to 3,600 churches across Tennessee. And the majority of our churches, 90% of those, are under 150. So we are a bunch of small churches. That's the really the meat of the cooperative program. It's the basis of little churches spread out all over really the world.
Right.
But one of the things I'm seeing is those churches, they don't have the means of technology. They don't have, most of the congregation is older, so they don't have a lot of the social media. But what we're seeing is people are jumping on board. We have awesome churches in areas that are welcoming other churches, pastors, members to come and say, hey, do you want to video this, or do you want to say this, that we can put it on the radio? And it's a beautiful thing when we're looking at the influence of the kingdom instead of just the individual church. Yeah. Also, we're having to shift the mentality. I think people have always said, man, church isn't the building, it's the people. I think that it was lip service though,
right?
Because so much discipleship, so much evangelism, everything was done through the doors of a church instead of looking at this, we as the people, we're the church. And how do we take Jesus to the street? How do we take Jesus to our neighbors, our family? And so I think we're literally living in a cultural shift of the church, that we have to take ownership of this. I know I've had some pretty great gospel conversations just in the last 2 weeks. I've kept my social distancing of my friends and neighbors across the street, and we'll just talk. Yep. And I actually got to meet a family that goes to church with me. We go to a pretty large church in Murfreesboro. I had no idea, but it all started with a simple conversation. And now we're like, hey, we can't wait till the end of this that we can come together as a family, celebrate, because we're very like-minded brothers and sisters in Christ. And we want to talk, and we really want to talk about how can we now buddy up together to lead our neighborhood to Jesus. But I think the church, that's what we're seeing. I have been incredibly proud of our churches, and especially our youth ministers. They're trying to be creative. Just for one instance, I've got a youth pastor in the Jackson, Tennessee area. Every day he's doing devotionals. He's talking and loving on people. Another great youth pastor in Lexington. I think you know the brother Ryan Keaton.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
So he's doing some funny videos.
Yes.
He's doing things to entertain at the moment, but everything has glimpses of the hope of Jesus Christ in it. I know I've got another great church in Johnson City and Memphis area that they're being creative doing like a lock-in at home, just to being kind of funny with it, and to say, hey, watch this movie, we're going to read this book, we're going to do these things. We're seeing some pretty creative ideas that are going all over. And what's amazing with that is I'm seeing people post these things that they're doing, and other youth pastors, they might not have a creative bone in their body, but they're able to go and see what others are doing. And really, there are no new ideas under the earth.
Right.
We get to, okay, what are we seeing that's happening now? And could it work in your context?
Right.
And I think that that's a great thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think
so.
What I'm seeing, to just piggyback off that is not serving on staff at a local church. I'm observing the local church. Like I'm involved, but
Yes.
I'm really observing because I'm not being an influence on a Sunday morning right now. Because I don't get to travel and speak anywhere right now. And so I'm observing on all these guys that I know and just people that I follow, and even through Mission Hope, we have a large network of churches. So I'm watching all these churches and what are they doing? And it has been a beautiful picture of what the kingdom looks like in my mind.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, to see churches equipping their people in their neighborhoods, instead of it's, hey, now, man, I can't wait for that first Sunday when we all get back together, bro. It's going to be a party. Right. It's going to be a party. But there is this moment right now of like, they're not saying come to us, or saying, hey, let us equip you to your neighborhood. Bro, that's exciting to me, to think about and to see that. But what I also love is like, it would be so easy in the middle of a pandemic to go and think everything has to be serious all the time. Woe is me, man. I gotta, everything's got to be figured out. Everything's bad. And I loved watching, there's a guy named Joel Morgan in Florida. He did a peanut butter and jelly sandwich tutorial, for his students. And I'm like, this is the content I'm here for, because man, like there's something about laughing too that's also holy, like everything is not bad. And so seeing all these different methods and ways of people equipping their people, it's beautiful to see. Absolutely beautiful. And so, man, even
watching like night shows, all the famous stars, you're seeing people in the confines of their home.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing, even when pastors, that there's some pastors that they're recording their message in their home.
Yeah.
And it is breaking a lot of barriers. And what you're seeing is really all of society, we're just people.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's going to help break down some of the walls that the people have built in the church. And saying that is, man, one of our great pastors in Memphis, his average attendance would be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,800 on a Sunday.
Right.
But they're having over 3,000 viewers on every Sunday when he preaches. And the thing is, we don't know how many that is in the home, because you might have a family of 3, 4, 5 people in a home, but they're having over 3,000 hits with like a long period of time that they're watching the service. And what we're seeing in that, and this is true all over, is there are people that have literally been scared to enter a church, maybe because of work, maybe because of past hurts or problems or failures, but now they're willing to listen and to see what's going on about Jesus through technology. And I think, man, God can use all things for his glory. And I think we have to, how do we pole vault from where we are now to look forward? So we always have to, in the now, we have to think of what's next. And so in that moment, how do we bounce off of this to what's going to happen next? And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with these kids. I know myself, I can't wait to party. I think my wife, she was like, hey, I can't wait to go shopping. I can't wait to go sit down in a Mexican restaurant. We're going to do all these things. I can't wait to hug my friends. But our kids, they're going to want to go and fellowship and party. And how awesome would it be if we could see churches that are literally starting to set up and prepare for a celebration at the end of this? Because if we don't do it, the
Got it,
world's
man.
going to do it.
For sure. It just like seeing everything I see right now, it gets me excited. You know,
Yeah.
man, if it's a big if, but if the church can prepare past the social distancing, right?
Yeah.
If we can think about what's going to happen at the moment of coming back to church, if pastors and leaders could prepare for that moment as much as they're investing into the moment of now, of like getting their social media up to par, getting their video stuff up to par, figuring out how to do Facebook Live, you know, when it keeps sticking, what do they do with that? Like, man, once they figure that out, if they can begin to prepare for that moment of return, whew, man, it could be huge. I mean, I just believe the foundation of that is hope, like hope in the gospel, bringing revival to our land, really to the world, man, because this is a world pandemic. You know, it's not just Tennessee, it's not just Texas, it's not just the United States, it's the world. So, bro, like this is in our current generation, in our lifetime, this could be the moment that the church rises up, man.
Now, I think, which I don't know if I'm weird, but one of the things that I think about is how will this.
You serve in student ministry.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Weird. Yeah.
I find joy being around teenagers.
Right, exactly.
One of the things that that plagues my mind is like, how will this pandemic change the dress code of the church? And I know that's weird, but I think could that be a barrier for some people? Maybe they can't wear what the other people that they see, because I know when I do videos, you might see a shirt and a tie, and then I got shorts underneath it.
Right.
But I wonder how many pastors are literally they're speaking to the computer, and they've got their suit and tie on, and they've got a pair of boxers on just underneath. We don't know, but could this break some barriers?
Yeah.
Because people are literally they're watching a screen, but they're seeing true life when you're looking in the homes. And I don't know. That's one of the things I keep thinking about is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, making you really think through, measure everything you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like everything in ministry. Okay, so this is being effective. Why are we not doing this? And why are we putting our time over here when we should be doing this? Or man, really, this is what sending my people to the neighborhoods looks like. Or as a volunteer or as a church member, like, this is what my pastor's been asking me to do. Like he's been teaching me to do for so long. It's like God is causing all these aha moments because we're finally having to stop and pay attention to life. We're having to slow down and actually figure out, what are we doing with our life right now? I need to lead my family in a Bible study. Right. And so, man, it's just this whole, like, I believe you could actually see a paradigm shift in the way church happens. I just feel that way in a sense.
No doubt. I mean, when you look in the Old Testament, the Shema, in Deuteronomy, I mean, we as the family, the husbands, the wives, we are to lead our family well. We are to teach and train our children in the ways of the Lord. My son actually just kind of walked by me a little while ago. This is his senior year. He's graduating. Everything has shifted. Everything has changed. And some of the kids one of the things that we've talked about, and specifically sat down with my wife, and he said, there are kids that he'll never see again if they don't go back to school. And for some kids, I've heard and I've read where some kids have said they would rather have a possibility of being affected with this COVID-19 than to be separated from their friends. And what I'm seeing in that is, man, people desire relationship. People desire the fellowship of others. And as the church, man, we should be leading the efforts of that. Yeah. And I love getting the feedback. Our executive director, Dr. Randy Davis, has told us we are contacting every church this week. Every church in our state, we're contacting to love on and encourage. What can we do to help? We have resources. And I love that because our boss is a pastor at heart. And that's really, as a follower of Christ, man, we're supposed to love God. And as we love God, we love people. Right. And I believe we have to be in contact with people.
Yeah, man, that's good. That's good, man. I know that I know that over your lifetime, you've had to have people that have poured into you. with your role, man, I'm sure there's been people that have equipped you and trained you. And I'm sure Bruce was one of those guys, Bruce Edwards, for a season. And I knew Bruce whenever I was in Tennessee for a while. And man, and just I would love to know, as people have discipled you or mentored you or whatever you want to call it, everybody calls it something different, and man, what would you say are just some of the leadership principles, maybe, two or maybe one or two that you would say, man, these are ones I hold on to, especially like right now, as everything's kind of in chaos, man, I'm holding on to this. What would you say those things would be?
I think the first thing has to be accountability. We need to have people in our life that are talking with us, asking us the questions. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, are you spending your time in the Word? Hey, who this week have you shared Jesus with? We can't live a life of just excuses. I actually served on a church staff one time that the pastor and the executive pastor, they were my biggest mentors and accountabilities I've ever had in my life. And every single Tuesday, we were asked those questions. Like, have you been in the Word every day? Like, who have you shared Jesus with this week? And as a staff, we would literally hear people, ministers of the gospel, that would say, I haven't had the opportunity to share Jesus with anybody. And our pastor would stop and say, hold on, every one of us have opportunities every day. What we have to do is we have to shift to look at this life and see, what are we doing? Who are we sharing Christ with? When we're in line at a grocery store, when we're walking our dog in the neighborhood, when we're having maybe our kids' friends that are over at our house, we have opportunities every day. And how are we taking advantage of that? For me, that accountability of knowing every Tuesday morning when I would show up to work, we're going to go over these things. Man, that was a huge weight on me, because before I went to that church, nobody ever held me to that kind of accountability. Because typically, you would hear people say, hey, man, have you shared your faith? But they would ask the question, but they never required a follow-up.
Wow.
And so in my life, when that became real, to know that every single week that was going to be asked of me, I didn't want to lie. I mean, that's not who I'm supposed to be, my character in Christ. And so I knew that, okay, hey, if I'm going to be asked this on Tuesday, I'm really starting on Wednesday, the week before. Man, I'm hitting the ground running. Who can I share this week? And it wasn't a competition like, hey, I can't wait. I want to tell them I shared Christ with 4 people. Right. But what I saw was I had to take advantage of this opportunity I have. And really, that's the life of Christ. If we have supposedly died to ourselves and it's Christ that lives in us, man, what would Jesus do? How would he live? Who would he speak with? And to know that one day I'm going to have to give God an account of my life. Will he say, Jay, you was right next to this person, and this person never heard the gospel, but Jay, you had access to them. You had access to the heart. And so accountability is really the huge thing in my life. Yeah. And I believe if you're going to be a mentor, you have to be being held accountable yourself by somebody, and then you have to be holding others to an accountability.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely the first thing, accountability. The second thing, I had an executive pastor that, man, he poured his life into me. And in that, he always kind of called it that he would come to me, and if he saw that, man, if I was upset, he would come and he would say that he was picking the scab. And he would come ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, I'm okay. And then he'd come back 15 minutes later. Hey, Jay, we need to go talk. And I'd kind of push him off. Then he would show up an hour later and say, hey, you're going to lunch with me, or you're going on a hospital visit with me. And what he did was he was asking for insight into my life because he knew something would be wrong. And he would just talk and he would pour into me. But in that relationship, he taught me one of the greatest things. He would say, Jay, and specifically in student ministry, what are you failing at? Mm. And man, at first when he told me that, I'm like, I came to him all big and bad. Hey, I ain't failing at nothing. Man, everything I'm doing is success. Man, we're seeing kids get saved. And then he came and said, Jay, if you're not failing at something, that means you're not dreaming big enough. Mm. And man, you talk about hitting me hard. Sorry, my little girl now just walked by. And so think about in ministry right now, like if we're not failing, and what I mean by failing is maybe from the world standards, but if we're always hitting the mark of everything we're doing, are we really dreaming for the kingdom? And when he really asked me about that, one of the things I did was we had this big See at the Pole rally. And I remember going to him and I said, hey, look, I'm going to shoot big for this. I'm praying, and God has told me to prepare for 1,000 kids to come on a Wednesday night to our church. And he was like, are you crazy? I said, hey, you've asked me to dream big. And I said, I started praying, and the Lord told me to prepare for 1,000. And what was crazy is it was like 600 to 700 students come that night. And I've never had something as big as that. We had over 100 kids come to know Jesus when we offered the gospel, and they responded to the gospel. And he came to me after the event was over, and he was like, hey, are you upset you didn't hit the 1,000? I said, heck no. I said, we just saw 100 kids get saved. We saw 600 to 700 kids come that night. Plus we had parents there. I mean, it was crazy the amount of people we had there. And I said, if I weren't driven to dream bigger, I said, you know what, I would have done just a typical Wednesday night of 200 to 300 kids. And I said, we can't. I said, you had me think outside the box. And man, we got creative with what we did. We tag teamed with schools and coaches and different people in the area, and we saw an event that every year just kept growing. And we saw a beautiful thing that happened, and it was all because a mentor in my life for accountability came and said, Jay, what are you failing at? Jay, are you dreaming big enough? And so I think that really it comes along with true mentorship and accountability. You got people that are going to push you. You got people that are going to hold you to a standard. And really he saw something in me that I never saw. And he wanted me to even push harder. And now I will say the advantage of that was I used it against him a lot of times. One time I wanted to start a new, like a fall retreat. And so I go to my staff, and they said, yeah, I don't think you should do that, Jay. I went, well, you told me to dream big, and I think we can do it. And they said, okay. And so I would use their wording, against them.
For those that are listening, Jay is not promoting insubordination. He's not doing that. No, I love it, man. I love it. That I don't always love accountability, but I know I always need it. It's always needed. And dreaming, man, I love to dream. Dreaming. I mean, you probably heard it in me just a minute ago, just thinking about what's the church going to do next, and I love to dream and to execute on dreams, man, I think even seeing what you do through YAC and through Conclave and those things, I mean, to me, that stuff is so important. And I know that you live and breathe that stuff. And so, that's good, and I'm thankful to know that there are leaders who are willing to be held accountable too, because there's some like, oh yeah, I'm good. No, you're not. If you're saying you are, you're probably not, so man,
I don't know if you've read the book, How to Ruin Your Life.
Who's that by? Do you know?
Eric Geiger.
Okay. Oh yeah. I know Eric. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, it's an incredible book. And one of the things that he points out early in the book, when David is living in rebellion, it's the time that he lived in isolation. That's when he sinned against God himself with Bathsheba, and it was all because of lack of accountability. It was because of isolation, and that ended up, when you look at the scripture, ended up in the moral bankruptcy in his life was chapter 13. It's crazy when we look at bankruptcy, it's filing chapter 13. But I think in every one of our lives, if we live an isolated life, if we live a life where we're pushing people away and not listening to what people are trying to teach us, we're going to see moral failure. We're going to see bankruptcy in our own life when we're not listening to the wisdom of others. Because I believe God will speak through his word. I believe God speaks through song. And I believe God speaks through other people, that just in a conversation when people will come to you. I remember when God was calling me into ministry, we submitted and surrendered to him. But one of the things that my family held on to was our home. And I had a sweet lady in our church come to us. And she came to me and said, Jay, you need to sell your house and move and go to seminary full time. And when I told my wife that, she was like, no way, we can't do that. But it was because of this lady coming to me and really encouraging me. I believe God started speaking to me, Jay, I don't know why you're holding on to this job. See, I had a career. I was a bread man. I worked for Wonder Bread, Hostess Cakes for a long time. And I held really on to that job as a sense of, hey, I don't have to worry about trusting the Lord in a sense, because I could be, my job would provide for me.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that time I went through now, because with my role, I deal with a lot of bivocational ministers. And because I had to do that for quite a while, it helped give me a lot of insight in the job I'm doing now. But it was the wisdom of others that spoke into my life that helped me to see really what God had a greater vision in store for me.
I love it, man. So Jay, the whole purpose of this podcast, this Lead Clear podcast, is for really anybody that leads in any capacity in life, which is basically everyone. For those of us our age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm guessing you're probably about the same age as me. I would call that an all-scout.
21, right?
Oh yeah. 20 years ago or something like that. 19.
Yeah.
The idea behind this is to help leaders think with clarity. Just to think clear and to be able to lead clear. And so I always try to give like a takeaway, piece, and always ask anybody that's on this, man, what's one thing you would want to say if there was no filter, if you knew that people were going to listen, and you could tell them one thing, to encourage them, to equip them, however you want to go about it. What is that one thing, man? If this is your one shot, right? What would you tell them?
Okay. Speaking to believers. So this isn't speaking to non-believers.
Yeah.
It's speaking to believers. There has to be one word that resonates in our life, and that's hospitality. I think we've lost it in the church. I think we've become so fast-paced that we don't welcome people into our home. Now, and for me, this has a lot to do with who my wife is. She has the gift of hospitality, and that girl can cook like nobody's business. And I'm really scared with us being trapped in this house that I'm going to end up being on my 600-pound life show, because, man, her cooking, I don't want to stop, man. Anyway.
Make some of that Cajun
food.
You make Cajun food? Some of that boudin?
Jambalaya. Yeah. Gumbo. Man, we got some good food.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no, you're fine. But just think about it. What if we started caring for more people? And I believe true hospitality, what you do is you welcome people in, or even you go somewhere and what you do is you love on them. And I think we've lost the meaning of the word love in our culture, because we love hot dogs, we love sex, we love music, we love all these things, and we love Jesus. But when we say this word care, we can't throw that word around flippantly. Yeah. And so we know what this true word and understanding of love is, but I think we've watered it down. But what would it look like if we cared for people? And I think that's what hospitality is. And so I believe as a believer, if we were to live a life of being hospitable and loving and caring for people, it changes everything. That means we can't push people away. That means we can't avoid confrontation. We can't avoid conversation. We can't avoid the things that really the world is seeking. Right now in Christianity, we're seeing a lot of people that once claimed to walk with Christ and to know Christ. There's major podcasts that two guys have said, hey, we walked away and abandoned Christianity because nobody had the conversations with us. We know one of the biggest names in music industry right now. She said, nobody answered the hard questions I had when I was a teenager. And so what we have to do is, if we truly care for people, we need to have conversations with them. And so it's really, if we're going to be hospitable, and I think that's what Jesus modeled. I mean, think about it. He walked with his disciples. He went into people's homes and sat down with them and ate with them and cared for them. The thing is, when you see care, you see action take place. Like, he healed the sick. So what does that mean in our life? We might not have the physical ability to heal somebody through our touch, but what we can do is we can introduce them to the King of Kings, Jesus Christ.
That's good, man. That's good. Bro, I appreciate your time today. And I know that you got a lot of phone calls to make, I'm assuming, if you guys are on every church. And so, man, I hope that you stay well, your family stays healthy during this time. And man, this is going to be dropping on Good Friday. And man, I am praying that God does an amazing work on Easter Sunday, because I know a lot of people like we were talking about, man, a lot of people are going to be tuning in on Easter Sunday like never before.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's what you said, man. They probably wouldn't go. Even on Easter, they may not go to a physical building, but they'll go to online. And so,
man, look, my wife even she ordered all new clothes for us for Easter, and my son was like, "Why are we doing this?"
right.
We literally have Easter outfits that she just ordered, and we're like,
we were talking
okay.
We were talking about that at our house. I was like, maybe we'll just do Easter pajamas. I'm not sure what. So, yeah, man. But, bro, I appreciate you. I'm thankful for what you do. Man, if I can ever be just a listening ear for you or a resource or anything, man, please don't hesitate to reach out. But I know the people that are going to listen to this are going to be encouraged. And I truly believe they're going to be equipped by the things you've said and encouraged too, man. And so, Jay, man, I appreciate your time, my man. And
appreciate you.
Appreciate you being on the Lead Clear podcast.
Thank you.